Oh,
It's on.
Hi, everybody. It's Wanda Baader here from Strategize Your Success, and together with my co-host Cynthia Bazin, we are Hot Tips for Biz here on Google Hangouts, bringing you the top experts and hot topics and tips for your business. Today we have two great people joining us on this Google Hangouts, and I'm going to go ahead and give it over to Cynthia Bazin to go ahead and introduce our guest host and our guest expert.
hi everyone, Cynthia Bazin here from Smart Chick. Welcome to Hot Tips for Biz. I'm so excited for our expert guest today, but first I want to introduce our guest host that's joining us, Jane Anderson from InsightSkill.com. Welcome, Jane. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And to get to our guest expert today, I'm so thrilled to have author Regan Black of ReganBlack.com. Welcome, Regan.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me, Cynthia and Wanda. It's great to see you, Jane.
Nice to see you.
So excited to have you, Regan. So Regan, you know what, before we jump into the topic that we're going to be talking about that's going to help so many of our listeners out there, managing distractions to create greater success, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Well, I'm an author. I primarily write fiction. So I have several books published in the romantic suspense genre as well as paranormal romance, but I also have several nonfiction books published as well.
Awesome. Well, we're so thrilled to have you here today. And because, you know what, you're a writer and you write so much, you have to eliminate distractions during your day, correct?
Yes, all the time.
All right. Well, you have pointed out 5 to us, so we're going to talk to you about those right now. So why don't you give us your thoughts, Regan, about creating office hours to manage distractions? That's your first point, correct?
Yes. Yeah, creating office hours is really important, and it was something that I struggled with. I thought, oh, I work from home. I'll roll out of bed. I'll have some coffee. I'll get the kids to school. Not a big deal. It didn't matter because I worked at home. So did I really need hours? You know, and if somebody needed something, oh, I could be flexible. That's no problem. Because I felt like I had the whole day and it was not a big deal. But I learned as I got deeper into my career and things started moving faster and deadlines approached that everyone around me has office hours. Just because my office is at home and my laundry pile is really accessible and the dog might need to go out every 10 minutes or whatever, just because we had those distractions didn't mean I didn't need office hours. So once I buckled down and discovered, okay, this is your best writing time, I stopped letting people interfere with it. So it wasn't just a matter of writing while the kids were at school or my husband was at work. It was also utilizing that time very effectively and just blocking it out and saying, no, I'm not available during this time, and respecting my own time.
So Jane, what do you think of that, creating office hours as an entrepreneur?
I think that that's one of the first things I learned from being part of the Smart Chicks Inner Circle is that you do have to establish office hours. And I just remember one night getting an email from you saying, are you logged off? Because I had said that I was going to be off my computer at 7 p.m. And so I said, yeah, right after this email, I'll be logged off. So it is very important because everybody's got to have some kind of downtime. And that's one of the things I know from working at home is that your work is always there. It never, ever, ever goes away.
See, I just want to add to that because the problem was I was still online when I was alerting you that you need to get off, so I needed to follow my own advice. So I'm still working on that also. What about you, Wanda? Do you have specific office hours, or sometimes do you have a challenge with that?
Well, I have a commercial space, so it's a little bit better, not to say that I am the best at it because of that. I sometimes have a tendency, I'll be here at the office and then, I check out, I go home, but then I always check in too. But, I'm a social media person, so it's kind of hard for me to check out completely because I have to kind of keep an eye out on client stuff and, things that are going on.
I think the key is, Regan, I'd love you to expand on this real quickly, is that, if we just always keep our office open, per se, and we just keep the computer open, we're not really being efficient in our work also. Isn't that true? That sometimes we just kind of keep going and going versus giving us almost like a positive push to get our work done? Do you agree with that, or?
I do entirely, and I think it's both sides of it. You know, I know authors who rent office space for that very reason. But again, so many of us, no matter what we do, social media is an increasing component of that. So you have, you know, when I started out, it's like, oh, well, I just work at home. I can do it anytime. Well, no, there are certain times that you're better at doing certain things, you know, and so when I stopped taking my own time for granted, when I stopped letting everybody and their brother infringe on it, I got much more effective right away. And it makes a big difference. You have to learn, you know, I have friends who can write with 6 kids playing in a pool outside and dogs running around. I'm not one of those people. So it really, you have to really fine-tune that, but I think when you define that time and at least guard some essential core of your time, it makes you more effective.
Awesome tip, Regan. Everybody, we're here with Hot Tips for Biz. Apologize. With Regan Black of ReganBlack.com. My co-host is Wanda Baader of Strategize Your Success, and our awesome guest host today is Jane Anderson from InsightSkill.com. Jane, do you want to bring up the next point with Regan?
I noticed your next point is about time blocking, and I've worked on that myself, but I'm very curious to hear how you handle time blocking.
Thanks, Jane. The first thing I do in the morning is I block time to get the caffeine in. But after about those that's right. Once I wake up and my husband's at the door, because it's just the 2 of us at home now most of the time, I try to get some journal time in, check in with social media, kind of get a feel for that. But then I've discovered that, you know, I used to think that I was a get up early and write kind of author. And I've discovered, I don't know if it's aging or what, that I'm not. That my most productive writing time, where I write the story forward, is actually from about 10 to 2. So if I'm on social media during that time, chances are it's pre-programmed stuff that I've done on Twitter, or I'll check in on breaks, because, you know, I have to get up and move a lot and everything. So that's what I'll do. I'll get to a certain milestone in my word count for the day, and I'll take a few minutes and check in on social media, or you know, take a break like that. But most of the time, I don't let anybody mess with that time. If, you know, I have a doctor's appointment, I try to schedule it around that time, all kinds of things. So I time block my writing time, but then I also time block my social media time. I find that, you know, first thing in the morning I can take 20 minutes, and I guess it's, you know, inflated from the coffee. I feel witty and fun, and, you know, Bandit and I go out and romp, and so I fill people in on that on social media, and I think they tune in for his news more than mine, which is fine. You know, he's a fun point. But I take that time and I concentrate it. And, you know, if my husband and I are just watching reruns in the evening, I can do some of my social media work like that. I edit better in the evenings, so I save that for after dinner a lot of times if I'm on a deadline that's coming in close and I have to work more hours than usual. I'll block that in. So I find I've learned through the years when I'm better at which things, and I try to focus that. So same with email. If I have a bunch of email to get done, I pick a time and get it all knocked out at once, rather than let it interrupt me through the day.
Makes sense.
Regan is speaking the truth, because let me tell you something. Sometimes I try to get in touch with Regan, and she says, I'm going into my writing cave. And I mean, bye-bye. See ya. I can't talk to you right now. We'll talk to you later. She's blocking time, and she does it very efficiently. Wanda, do you do that in your own life? Do you do blocking time?
Yes, absolutely, because I know when I'm at the, you know, what times of day are better for me for certain tasks. And it took me a while to kind of grab that, you know, with defining my job and my skill set, and, you know, hey, I'm not a get up at 4:30 in the morning and, you know, can function. I'm like, don't talk to me at 4:30 in the morning. But I'm more of an evening person, and so my genius is the best in the afternoon towards the evening time.
You know, awesome, Wanda. You know, Jane, I'm thinking of your business because you do social media for people, you review books, correct, as far as InsightSkill.com. How easily can you get distracted and just start, you know, reviewing this blog, doing this book review? You know what I mean? Is that time blocking so important for you, isn't it, being part of social media?
I do agree with that about the time blocking. As a matter of fact, I have little things here when I find days that I'm getting very distracted. I have little things that I have written that I stick up in front of myself, like Jane, focus. Stop checking email.
I love it.
Get to work. And I have one, get off Facebook. And I have a few other, I have little sticky notes. I was thinking maybe I should go into business of making little sticky notes that you can put up in front of your face. It's like, get off of social media now.
That'd be really cute. I love that.
I do that with my phone timer all the time. I set my timer and I, set a limit on it. And then if I'm distracted and it goes off, it's like, oh man, I didn't get done what I needed to get done. I push that to my to-do list till the next break. It's the only way I can get through. So, yeah. And I've stopped. I think this is key also. And I don't think, I often tailor this comment, especially as women, but it's really anybody who works from home or anybody with an entrepreneur when we have a lot of irons in the fire. I've stopped feeling apologetic about it. If I need to go in the writing cave, writing's my business. My next book is my business. Mm-hmm. I've stopped apologizing to the world for needing that time. Other people do what they need to succeed. That's where it's gonna, that's how it's got to be for me. And I've just stopped feeling sorry about it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I love that. Go, Regan.
I have an audience comment here. Gail Foley says, Jane, tattoos work good for that too.
I love that. Hey, Gail, nice to see you here, Gail. Thanks so much for joining in. We really appreciate it. And Regan, let me just tell you, these things, you know what, they may seem like simple things, but they're such great reminders because sometimes, you know what, we start time blocking, right? And then we sway out of it. Or, you know what, we have the office hours, and then, you know what, all of a sudden we're up till 11 o'clock doing stuff, or I'm replying to Jane, or, you know what I mean? So these are great reminders for us to just, you know what, we got to take a step back and really make sure we're using our time efficiently. All right, Wanda, you're on. Do you have something for Regan?
Yes, let's talk about defining your spaces, especially when you're working at home, because then, it's like you might have interruptions from the family or the spouse and all. How do you advise people to kind of, carve out a space for their privacy?
Well, I think the first thing you have to realize is it doesn't have to be a big space. It doesn't have to be a formal space. But if you need that formal space, like you said, Wanda, you have a commercial space. And I know other authors who have taken that step with great success. It's not always the option for all of us. It depends on our circumstances. For me, I just always wanted to be at home. There was a comfort in being at home and being available for my kids. And again, that goes back to managing your office hours. But for me, my goal is to have an office with a door. And I didn't. I mean, I would hide out in the bedroom for a while. I had this little nook I created in the bedroom, and it was a comfy chair, and I had my Alpha Smart, but my desk was always somewhere else. And so for me, a lot of times if I'm working forward on a book, because of my situation, I'll work anywhere in the house when I'm alone. And I may move around to different places. But when the kids were little, I would have it was like one of Jane's notes, and it said, "Do not disturb until." And I would put a sticky note on it with the time so I could reuse the note, and I would put it on the back of my chair. And if my kids were not suffering arterial bleeding, or if the house is not burning down, they needed to respect that time. And yes, my children knew at the age of 4 what arterial bleeding was. It was not a hangnail. It was not leave it to an author to describe these horrible things to your children. So anyway, so I think it's really important to have that space for you. I have this desk behind me is an heirloom from my grandmother, and I found a few years ago that I really write better when I'm writing forward on a story there. But the strange thing is, I don't edit very well there. I edit better in my professional space that I have now. I have for a few years. I'm so excited. I have dedicated space, and nobody messes with it. If I'm there and my back's turned, because it's the way the room's arranged, they know not to mess with me, or at least to ask. So that's, I think, very key. So I have different tools I use for different tasks. And then I will work different tasks in different areas. But the editing almost always goes faster sometimes I have to move around for my back, but the editing always goes faster at the desk, and I can just sit down, and it gets my head in that space to crank that out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Very much. I just want to throw something in. I just did a quick Periscope today about taking breaks. For me, it's not so much about the dedicated space for work, is that I've got to get up out of that workspace and take a break. So I used to do lunch all the time right at my desk, and you know what I mean? So I'm continuing to work. So I think it's really important to separate yourself during lunchtime, during those breaks.
Yep.
So I take my lunch and I go somewhere elsewhere, even if it's just into another room or outdoors or something. So designating spaces and break times, too, is just important. So I just wanted to throw that in.
And that's an excellent point. That's exactly what I'm talking about, is just to give yourself, it cues your brain and your body into different things, into a different task. It switches that gear for you. And
Yes.
I think it's essential.
Jane, how good are you at separating, different spaces for like eating, work, relaxation time?
I have a formal office. It's very large because it can, like there's a TV in here which I don't turn on if I'm working, and it's got, the essential Keurig coffee brewer is in here, but I have a formal workspace. So that part of it I have taken care of, but it's just like Regan said, I do better editing after I've written something and I let it sit for a while. I print it off, and then I take it to a completely different area than my desk. And even though I could just use my computer and edit right online, I find that it's much easier, and I'm a lot more, accurate at editing if I take it away from my work area and just redline it and then come back to it. But whenever I'm going to have lunch or something, I don't eat at my desk. What I do is, I might go upstairs, and I might even turn on the TV for 15 minutes. And I'm an anti-news person, so I don't watch the news, but I might watch like HGTV or something like that for a few minutes and give my mind a break, because I'm constantly looking at a computer screen.
Wanda, do you have any good tips that you can share regarding defining spaces or something that you do in particular?
Well, I believe in closed doors. And I know that might sound kind of simple, but I think a lot of people, especially when I worked out of my house for 8.5 years before I, went into a commercial space. And, when you have kids and other family members who are wanting your attention, they know that if the door is closed, that they really have to think twice about, should I knock? Should I text? How should I approach the situation? And is it really urgent, or can it wait? So I am a firm believer in closing your door.
Perfect. Again, everybody, we're here with Hot Tips for Biz. Awesome tips and strategies to make your life smarter, not harder, right? And we've got Regan Black of ReganBlack.com, my awesome co-host Wanda Baader of Strategize Your Success, and our fabulous guest host, Jane Anderson from InsightSkill.com. Okay, we've touched on this next one a little bit, but Jane, why don't you go to your next point, and we'll kind of even maybe delve into it a little bit deeper, or maybe just kind of summarize it again.
Well, I have this problem a lot where people say, well, you're not working, so could you do? And it's like, without feeling guilty, I have taken charge of that, and I would like to know how Regan handles saying no, because I'm sure you get a lot of, well, you're just at home, you could do.
Yeah, through the entirety of my children's grade school life, it was like, oh, well, you just work at home, you can drive the carpool. Oh, you just work at home, you can do this. Oh, you just work at home. And it took, honestly, it took me years. It took lots and lots of practice. And like you said, to learn to say it and not feel guilty about it. And like Cynthia said, we touched on it a little bit earlier. When you honor and respect your time and what you need to get done in your business, people will push against that. People who want your time or think they can horn in, you'll get some resistance, but the more you say it, the more you practice it, the easier it becomes, and the more rewarding when you realize, oh yeah, I really want to be there for this event, but that means I have to say no to this other thing, or I have to say no to my business. And so it kind of, when you know what your priorities and your values are, I think learning to say no becomes a little bit easier, but you'll still get pressure. I mean, you know, my son called today. I was trying to wrap up a few things, and I wasn't going to take any book calls from anybody. I haven't heard from him in over a week, you know, maybe two, and that's good news when you have a 19-year-old at college. So that was a good thing. But when he called, I went ahead and picked up the phone, partly because I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to catch up with him. But I also knew that with Robert, it's with both my children now. It wasn't then, but it's very easy for me to say I have to go or I have to go do this thing. So that's something that's come with training. And learning to say no is just try it. You'll be amazed at how free you feel, and you'll be so stunned when the world is still there and there's been no apocalypse just because you said no. And that's not a matter of overvaluing ourselves. I think it's just naturally we want to please people, and it's like, oh yeah, I can be the flexible one. But should you be the flexible one? When you know your value structure and your priorities, it's much easier to choose where to say no, and it's easier to protect your time.
Wanda, what do you have to say to what Regan is saying? Resonate?
Yeah, I learned the power of no a while ago. It is very freeing, and you can't, you know, it's like nowadays everybody wants to be superwoman, and we're a room full of women here. So that's the power of no helps in being able to say, you know, I can't do it all.
Right.
Or I can't do that right now. Or it's not that I don't want to do it, but I just can't do it at the moment. So I guess it's, you know, there's the way of saying no and the nice way still.
Well, and different situations call for different things. You know, I could often volunteer in the late afternoons. Once I realized when my writing time was, there were a couple days a week I would go in to the kids' classrooms and help out late in the afternoon, because that also put me there for carpool. So it kind of time blocked everything. It let me feel part of the situation and get involved without monopolizing everything. But and that's just, I think no is more a matter of practice and being true to ourselves than it is anything else.
Absolutely, Regan. You know, I'm just thinking about when I work with women and they're overwhelmed and they're yes people and stuff like that. You know, I say, okay, you can't automatically say no. So let's start it. Let's start this. Say, I'll get back to you. Don't say yes right away. So I'll get back to you, and then evaluate it. Is this something that's going to fuel my life, or is this something that's going to drain my life? And then after you think about it, then you can go back with a confident answer, because I see a lot of people that are yes people, they feel guilty right away and go, yeah, you know what, I can fit it in, versus really thinking about it. So before saying yes, say, you know what, I'll get back to you, evaluate it, and then come back with a no, you know, or a yes if it really is going to be something that, you know, you really should be doing, or something that's going to add to your life. But don't just feel like you have to say an answer right away.
That's very important. That is very important, to give yourself that breathing space.
Right. So, all right. You know what? It's a half-an-hour show, Regan. We're really moving and grooving here. We've got about 5 minutes left. Unbelievable. So, do you have any other strategies that you can provide us to that can protect our time?
Well, I think calendar management, this is something that a friend of mine who's an executive assistant preached to me for years. And I kept saying, well, what do you mean? It's not a big deal. I sit and I write, and I know when the book's due. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And invariably, things would happen. I'd let things creep in. You know, it just wasn't, I wasn't as productive as I could have been. And finally, I thought about it. You know how when we go to a hair salon, you know, we've talked about time blocking, we've talked about office hours. But when I don't know if you remember the old books from the hair salons where they would just X out the whole day if they had like a 3-hour color, or if they were on vacation. And that's when I started doing that, when I started doing macro calendar management, not just day time management, but looking at the month and saying, no, I'm going to go see my kids this weekend. So that means I'm not going to be able to write for X amount around that time, or my write. And then I can look at the whole calendar and know if I'm going to need extra time here or there for a deadline. Does that make sense? Because, okay, say if I write 3,000 words a day, theoretically, Monday through Friday, I'd have a book done in 3 weeks. But if there are appointments or things that interfere with that, so when I started to look at the bigger scope, not just my daytime production, but the bigger scope of getting these projects done, it made a huge difference. So, and I mean, I've done that out so far as a year before, but in my industry, that gets changed all the time. So when I did a year calendar, I had this beautiful wall calendar, and I had my schedule, and it just got all jacked up, and it was covered with all kinds of sticky notes and erasures, and it wasn't worth it. But if I look at the month and the project, I can do it that way, and know when I need to pad. Yeah, I can have it done for you, and know how I need to pad it out. Does that make sense? But I think one of the critical things to being successful when you're working at home, when you're managing your own business, I think one of the critical things is learning to tell the difference between a crisis and a distraction. You know, Wanda touched on that. The closed door makes your family think, should I send a text message? Should I interrupt her at all? Should I pound on that door because arterial bleeding? You know, so I think learning to tell the difference between what is actually a crisis and what is a distraction. You know, the laundry dryer goes off. If I'm zipping through the book, that's not a crisis. That doesn't need me to pull out. That laundry will be there. I've got a wrinkle setting. You know, I can pull it out again later. So, I mean, and I can, you know, it's when to do those tasks. It's when to manage. I mean, there's times when my husband comes home and he's like, I thought you're vacuuming. I thought you were busy. Well, vacuuming helped me think, so I vacuumed instead. So, but again, it's crisis versus distraction. And I think you've got to learn to sort that out. I'll throw a friend of mine under the bus. She was supposed to be working on a project, and I got for a week solid. I got nothing but emails about her computer crisis. To her, it was a crisis. And it was just smack there. She had a working computer. It was a distraction. It was an evasion tactic. You've got to learn how to do that. And stress plays into how we perceive distraction versus crisis. So I think it's very important to take a deep breath. Think about it. Just give yourself that grace. Is it a distraction? Is it a crisis? And then change your schedule if you need to. Does that make sense? And then I always think positive reinforcement. Cynthia and I have talked about this a lot. We talked about it, you know, we've talked about it in the inner circle plenty, Jane. Is positive reinforcement. You know, the girls in the inner circle know that when I finish a draft, I pop a bottle of champagne. It's usually cheap champagne, but it's the principle. The draft is good, we can celebrate. And I did that because for so long, I would finish a draft and clean the house from top to bottom. And it just seemed like the wrong reward, even though a clean house...
It's a wrong reward. It's a terrible reward.
Exactly. I mean, even though I liked not having dust bunnies with name tags running around, it was the wrong reward. So I switched to champagne. And it's kind of silly. And Cynthia and I have joked about it as, you know, as my career keeps moving forward, the champagne quality will improve. And that's important too. But I think actually it's on my husband's shopping list today to bring home to be ready for Friday. But positive reinforcement and rewarding those. So you give yourself that time. You know, you take some extra time, you go to a movie, you know, you go out for a girls' day, whatever you need. To positively reinforce when you've protected your time. Does that make sense?
I love the positive reinforcement thing.
Yeah. It makes such a difference.
Wanda, did you do that for yourself, positive reinforcement?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
cool. Shoes, a cute dress, you know, everything. I go for the shopping reinforcement.
What about your
retail therapy?
Go ahead, Jane. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I told Wanda, I said a little retail therapy.
You know, and for me, as people know about the coffee thing, you know what, I try not to go to do too many lattes or macchiatos, so, you know what, I save those expensive coffee days for something once I get a good project done or something like that. I like to reward myself with that. So, with that said, you know what, Regan, this half hour went by so quickly. Could you quickly list, if you have in front of you, the 5 ways that you manage distractions, just so people, you know what, they need to write them down one more time.
Okay, first of all, we went over learning to think in office hours.
Yes.
So set in office hours, you know, be nice to yourself. Set some office hours. Time blocking or task blocking was our second point, where you group like-minded tasks. Set a timer. You know, you've got an hour to take care of your Twitter and social media or whatever you need to do. Do you always send emails in the evening when you're on? Whatever works for your schedule and the way your business in mind is strong, make sure you're doing those things in the right time. Third was to define your spaces and tools. Like Jane said, she prints out her stuff and she goes to a whole different area to edit. I will wander around the house if I need to with my little Alpha Smart when I'm working on things. So make sure that your tools and your space match what you need to do. Wanda has her commercial space, of which I'm actually jealous. And our fourth tip was learning to say no. The world will not end. And Cynthia had the excellent point of when you're asked to do something, rather than say yes immediately, give yourself a minute to think about it. You know, hang on, I'll get back to you. Let me check my calendar. Those are all valid reasons so that you can be sure it's something you want to change your schedule for. And then we just kind of reviewed a few ways to protect your time. You know, macro calendar management, do not disturb signs, and really understanding in your life the difference between a distraction and a crisis. And then as you succeed with saying no and setting your office hours and time blocking, make sure you give yourself some positive reinforcement to keep those good habits going.
Regan, you need to be a coach. You're awesome. You're awesome. I learned so much. They were great reminders for me, and I know everybody loved them. Regan, how can people find you? I know your lower third is on there, but what's the name of your website? How can people best find you? Is it there?
Yeah, it's under that there as well, but it's www.reganblack.com. I'm also on Twitter, just @ReganBlack, and you can find me on Facebook too under Regan Black, or my fan page is at Regan Black's author, I think. But it's all on there. I'm around, and I guess I'll be going to Blab next. I don't know.
We're all going to Blab, so. Hey, Regan, thank you so much. Regan Black, you know what, always awesome. You know what, and you have inspired us all to manage our time better. So thank you for being a fabulous expert. Jane Anderson, thank you so much for being a guest host. You were wonderful with your points and your questions. And I'm going to give it back to my fabulous co-host, Wanda Baader of Strategize Your Success. Finish us off for the day, Wanda.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Regan, and thank you, Cynthia, for being an awesome host, and thank you, Jane, for being an awesome guest host. We really appreciate your time and your wisdom that you reflected in this conversation. We are Hot Tips for Biz, and we are so happy that you joined us. If you're catching us on the replay, you can find us on YouTube or Google+. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Regan. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Wanda.
Thank you.